Namaste, bitches. Welcome to another installment of Dumb Woke. Today I'm going to talk about something that I mentioned in a previous video. I had said something about, having a conversation with my friend and him saying something along the lines of suffering is necessary for personal growth. And in the beginning, I had said, I don't believe it is, but I think my mindset around that has changed a bit. Now I think suffering is necessary until it isn't, right? And, what I mean by that is often when you listen to, a lot of spiritual teachers or certain philosophies of life, one of the things that they will say is that we create our own suffering. Now, initially when I heard that, one of the things that came to mind that I'm sure many of you have also thought about is, well, like, what about situations that are out of our control, or instances in which people have, been exposed to an immense amount of trauma or injustice that they have endured, that they didn't really, it's not like they brought that upon themselves. It was just that things happen, circumstances happen in which they were exposed to that, right? So I would never go up to a child who has been through, some form of physical, sexual, or mental abuse in their upbringing and say, well, hey, like, you need to get over it. You're just doing this to yourself. What I think that means is that even in those darkest periods of our life, right, there can be instances in which we have the opportunity to learn, to grow, but also to gain a sense of strength and love that is needed for us to, spread it to others or empathize with others, and I think a perfect example of that is a book, one of my favorite books, called The Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. And I think I've mentioned this before, is he says it is not necessarily the event or the tragedy itself that causes us to suffer. It's the fact that we can't find meaning behind the reason why we're suffering, right? He was a psychologist who was sent to Auschwitz during World War II. He was part of the concentration camps. And then luckily he survived and he ended up being free. But at the end of it, when he talks about gaining their freedom, he tells a story about his friend walking through a field of flowers, right? Pardon me, because I might butcher the story or I might say it wrong, but this is essentially what he was saying. He talks about his friend walking through a field of flowers. He tramples on these flowers, and he looks at his friend and he's like, yo, why would you do that? Like there's a perfectly good path here. Why would you walk through the flowers? And his friend looked at him and said, the world has shown me nothing but hurt, suffering, and turmoil. So why would I return anything less? Why would I return it anything less, right? And basically what he said was, at that moment, he realized when us as human beings, when we are exposed to an immense amount of suffering or certain tragic situations, one of two things happens. It's either we take that situation and we begin to extend more compassion, more empathy to others, because we recognize that we do not want to do unto others that which was done unto us, right? The second thing that could happen is that event or that circumstances can cause us to become colder to the world. It can cause us to shut love out completely, and we end up doing the same things that was done unto us, and basically causing history itself to repeat. And you see that a lot from individuals who go on to physically abuse others or become abusive to children or younger ones. Have they themselves been a victim of that same kind of abuse when they were younger? And that's by no means to defend their actions. It's just to shine light on the fact of how this can occur in our daily lives, right? So what I mean by, suffering is necessary until it isn't, is I can look back in my own life and see situations in which I've been in relationships that were not the healthiest for me. or in circumstances in which I felt like I was the victim. And I've spoken about this before, but when we do that, right, it also gives us an excuse as to why we don't need to grow, or why, we should be allowed to stay in that realm of thinking. And we should restrict ourselves from seeing the power that we do hold. And also we take away the gift that we have to offer the world, right? Because imagine you're able to live to your highest potential. Imagine you're able to live in your greatest potential, and think about how you can take that tragic event that you've endured and almost utilize it as a means to extend love back into the world, right? Because that is much more powerful, and that can be much more meaningful. And I'm not saying that when we go through certain events we don't have the freedom to feel, upset, or we don't have the freedom to feel weak. Of course, right? But I think the important thing is to take those moments and learn from them and grow from them, because we now have the opportunity to show other people who may be going through the same situation as us, or have been enduring the same pain as we did, and show them a different way out. Another person I could think of is Maya Angelou, right? Who is an incredible author, and she openly talks about some of the trauma that she had faced as a child, right? I don't want to speak too much about it just in case people are sensitive to certain things, but she openly talks about the tragedies and the trauma she's faced as a child. But looking at her today, she's one of the most world-renowned authors, and she writes incredible stories, right? And she took a situation in which it was very justified for her to be like, yo, fuck this, like the world is shit and people are shit, and I don't owe it anything. And she doesn't owe it anything, but she chose to take that circumstance, tell her story, share her story, and say, even through all of that somehow love can prevail, right? And showed people a different side of the world. And I think the scariest part about it all is when we go through certain tragedies and these circumstances, and you begin to want to nurture yourself or heal yourselves and heal those parts of yourself, you realize that you are now responsible for the world. And I don't mean that in an egotistical type of sense. I don't mean that you're gonna end poverty or end racism or whatever the fuck the case is. What I mean by that is you recognize the amount of weight your actions and your relationships with others truly holds, right? Because think about a time when you were having a shitty day or a rough day, and someone did something to you to piss you off or annoy you. And it could have been something small, right? It could be something that if someone did it to you on a regular like on a regular day, on an average day, you probably would have just ignored it and you would have just left it alone. But because you were already in a place where you felt dark and you felt upset, this just threw you over the edge. Now think of a time where someone did something unexpectedly kind to you, unexpectedly loving towards you, and how that might have switched your whole mood, right? It could have been the smallest thing. Someone bought you a coffee in a drive-thru. Someone just said you have a beautiful smile, right? Someone complimented you, and then all of a sudden it's like, yo, like that small instance could have had the biggest impact on your perception of the world for that moment, because you could have been totally open to ignoring whatever love or empathy or compassion that you thought existed in the world, and been like, yo, fuck it, the world is shit, and you can justify as to why that is. But then that one person or that one moment or that one action could have given you a sense of hope that was needed for you to realize, yo, there's much more to the world than I thought there was. And once we can take our stories and realize that we are the author of our narrative and not just a character playing a role, we begin to become our own storyteller, right? We can begin to tell stories to ourselves in order to shape and create a new narrative, not just for us, but for the rest of the world, you know? That's basically it. I hope, you know, someone took something away from this. And of course, if you guys, like I said, if you have anything to add, if there's anything you guys would like to challenge, or if any thoughts on the video, please hit me up, leave in the comments, because this is going to help me as well. And I want this to be more of a learning experience for me, right? And for anyone listening or anyone watching. Thank you guys again. I appreciate you. Hope you guys stay blessed. Peace and love. Namaste, bitches.